All right, there's our objective for the day. I can write and simplify rates and ratios. The good news about these rates and ratios is we've done it before. It was just called fractions. Now we've given it kind of a little bit of a different name, which we're going to go over. But you've done it before, now it's going to be in a slightly different context. And now since we can use calculators, it's going to make things a whole lot easier for us, or at least I hope it will. Okay, so rates and ratios. So a ratio is just a comparison between two values, two numbers, no matter what the numbers are. They could be even the same number. You can compare them. And it's usually how many times a value goes into another value. For example, let's say we had a ratio of 1 to 1. Now this is the symbol that we usually use for ratios right there. That's just a regular colon, two dots, one above and below each other, just like this. If you put a number on the left, and then a number on the right, you now have a ratio. But it's asking how many times the second number goes in the first one. So if this one is my ratio, it's 1 to 1. Really, that would be 1 divided by 1. So in other words, how many times does 1 go into itself? 1 time. Now if we change these numbers a little bit, which I would like to do now, right? We've seen this before, something like this. 10 to 2 ratio, something like this, which again is really just 10 divided by 2. So how many 2's are in 10? 5. Boom. So this means that pretty much if you know how to divide, then you know how to use the ratios. In other words, this symbol right here, if we were to take that symbol and really just kind of plant a line between it and show it as division like this, just like you see the division sign down here.
What that means?
That's correct.
Division.
Division, it means ratio. Ratio, that colon
and it means you
means
have
division.
To divide, right?
That's correct. Okay, now, like we saw in the objective though, they're going to want this simplified. So they don't want a 10 to 2 ratio usually. If they do on the assignment, which they will, they'll just say do not simplify. That's it. But for the most part, we will be. In fact, as a ratio, this 5 that we're seeing right here, if we still wanted to show it as a true ratio, we would show it as a 5 to 1 ratio because we would have taken the 10 and the 2 and both divided them by 2. Simplifying 10 divided by 2 is 5, 2 divided by 2 is 1. Now, right there, the numbers don't represent anything, right? But later on, what we're going to see is that these numbers have labels on them. And when they have labels, then we call it a rate. That's the only difference. Now, please do not get confused by the language because both indicate division. So if you understand that you are still looking at a division, no matter if it's a rate or ratio, then hopefully you can understand that all you're doing is dividing. I'll give you an example, even though we're going to see some more on the assignment or on the examples. This is one that you may be familiar with. You go, let's make this fairly simple, 500 miles in 5 hours. Okay? Now, I didn't say what you were doing, if you're driving or biking or flying an airplane. I don't know what you're doing. Let's just say that for some reason you go 500 miles in 5 hours. We could also say that you went 500 miles per 5 hours. Okay, now that's not really what I would consider proper English or even math language for that matter, but I don't care because I'm just trying to emphasize the point. You see, now we have labels on these, right? Miles and hours. We're comparing two numbers, 500 and 5, but they now have labels. That's it. And if you wanted to reduce these, you could say, you know what? I'm going to divide them both by 5, and then you would show that you have now gone 100. Let's make this 100 miles. In fact, I'll just do it like this, miles per hour. Okay? Or if you wanted to be, I don't know if that's more specific, but a little different there. You could say MPH, miles per hour. That would be the rate. This is the rate that you were traveling, at least on average, if you went 500 miles in 5 hours. But you may ask, well, how did we get this 100 miles per hour? Oh, we did. 500 divided by 5 is 100. So what we have is 100 miles. In fact, I'm going to kind of switch this label because it kind of looks like meters. Miles, it's really per 1 hour. And that way we can see both the numbers that are being compared, making it a ratio. The labels make this a rate. Miles, so if you see MPH, it's actually two numbers, 100 and also 1. So as we've seen in this lesson, they're going to ask for something that is called a unit rate. Like we saw, it was a unit price. But a unit rate is specifically, because remember, a rate or ratio, a ratio is a comparison of two values. A rate is a comparison of two values that have labels. A unit rate is a comparison of two values that have labels, but one of the values must be a 1. It's usually the second one, right? Like in the past, you'd look at something like this and you say miles per 1 hour. This is considered a unit rate, miles per hour. Like we saw, sometimes it's like dollars per 1 pound or something like that. So this one's saying write this as a ratio. It says do not reduce though. Okay, so we're not looking to simplify here, meaning a calculator is not really so important right now. Because we're just going to take the numbers they give us and write that as a ratio. So let's see, let's read this. The American Association of Community Colleges reported that 70 out of 100 full-time community college students balance their studies with full-time or part-time employment. Okay, so with a rate or a ratio, there should be two numbers involved. Do we have two numbers?
Yes.
And what are they?
70 and 100.
Boom. Yep, I'm going to start here at 70. We got 70. Then we have 100. Now, the 70 is part of the 100, right? These 70 people, these are full-time community college students out of the 100 full-time college community. So you had 100 of them, but only 70 of them meet this condition where it says they balance their studies with full-time or part-time employment. So we do have the two numbers that we are comparing, the 70 and the 100. Okay, so in order to make this ratio, once again, it says up here, make it a ratio. Okay, no problem. Just put a colon between them, and that should be it. Now, of course, like I said, you may even notice that this can be simplified. We don't care. It says right up here at the top, please do not simplify or reduce, so we didn't, and that's it. Now, even though this is saying not to reduce, if I wanted to put this in the calculator, how would I do that? Okay, if I was going to put this in the calculator, I would put it in as a fraction. So I'd use the N over D button, and you can type in 70 over 100, and what it would do is the calculator would simplify that to you as a 7 over 10 ratio. Now, it's showing it as a fraction. Well, yeah, but this is not showing it as a fraction. That's true, because now I know that it's 7 over 10. I can now change that into a 7 to 10 ratio, like this. And both are the same. Now, again, this is simplified, which we didn't need to do.
So when it asks,
Yeah, so once you get that, you're done. Of course, again, we didn't really need this, but we will for some of the other problems. All right, so let's see this one. You are an office manager and need to purchase blue and black pens for your office. You bought 3 blue pens for every 5 black pens. Use this information to find the following ratios. Write your answers in fraction form. So like we saw in that last problem, I wrote the ratio as a fraction. Now it's telling us specifically to write the ratio as a fraction. So it says we got the ratio of blue pens to black pens. Then we want a ratio of black pens to blue pens. And then we want a ratio of black pens to pens of either color. Now that's 3 different questions. Take a minute, see if you can figure out what they are, then we'll go over it. All right, well, let's take a look. Okay, now, again, these are all ratios, so we need 2 numbers to compare, all right? And the first one, it says up here, you got 3 blue pens. Now, the ratio here, it says blue pens to, make this purple just so we can differentiate, blue to black pens, okay? And up here, they say, that's for every 5 black pens that purchase, you get 3 blue pens, okay? So that means that right there, just with the numbers that were given, you have the 3 blue pens, That's for every 5 of the black pens. Now again, it is a ratio, so you could just put the dots between, but it did say it wanted it as a fraction, so it's a 3-to-5 ratio. There we go, 3-to-5. And this would be the fraction. Now, it says write your answers in fraction form. I guess it didn't say to simplify, but it is already simplified anyways. Okay. The next part. Now this next one, you notice that it's using the word to, which is another way to indicate that you have a ratio. So it's kind of redundant. They say ratio and then it's black pens to blue pens. It doesn't matter. It's okay to be redundant like that. So we're going to start with the black pens, which it says that's 5 black pens purchased, to the blue pens, which would be 3. Now again, if I wanted to write it as a ratio, I would put either the word to in between, or I can put this colon in between. But again, this was asking for us to write this as a ratio fraction. So again, the first number goes into the numerator. The second number goes into the denominator. Now you'll notice this first one, we had a 3-to-5 ratio. This one now is 5-to-3. All they did was switch the order of these. Now, if you switch these, the answers, so if you say this is 5-to-3, it's incorrect. That is specifically, this 5-to-3 ratio is specifically the black to blue pen ratio. Okay, so we need to be specific and clear which numbers we're using, which is why I'm trying to color code these as we go. This next problem is a little different. It says you're going to have black pens. Now, again, we know there's 5 black pens. 2, so that's our ratio, so I'm going to put the colon in there. We'll get to the fraction. In fact, I'll start it here on the right, which I'm actually doing so I don't forget because I probably will. But it says it's to pens of either color. So if we're looking at either color here at the top, so either color, that means that you would have bought 3 black pens if you had purchased 5, I said black, I meant 3 blue pens for 5 black pens that you purchase. So we're going to add those together, and that's both colors right there. That's going to be 8 pens. So I guess I should have put that in orange. So that's a 5-to-8 ratio, which now as a fraction is 5-to-8 ratio as a fraction, 5/8. So be careful because the wording on that may be a little unclear, like pens of either color. What the crap are they talking about? It's just saying both colors. Now, from what I remember seeing on the assignment, they're not going to put more than 2 colors on there. But if they did, which they could, they'll say something like black pens to the pens or all the pens or something like that, total pens or something like that. So just be careful. Again, just if they say of either color, then they're talking about both. If there's more, then they may word this just a little different. All right, now this one, it's saying specifically that we do want this ratio in lowest terms, fraction in lowest terms. 52 cats to 60 cats. Take 30 seconds, see if you can write this as a ratio and then write it as a fraction in lowest terms. All right, so 52 to 60. Now, if I was writing this as a ratio, by the way, they're comparing cats to cats. It's okay to compare the same thing. You can compare cats to cats, dogs to dogs, dollars to dollars, whatever. They don't have to be different like we usually look at like miles per hour kind of thing. But on this one, we have the 2, which indicates it is a ratio, which we're going to write as a fraction as well. We'll start with the 52 cats, 52 to 60 cats. Now, if I wanted this as a rate, I would put the labels on there, but they said specifically that they want the ratio. I don't need labels. So as a ratio fraction, this would be 52 over 60, which, by the way, this fraction you could read as 52 to 60 as well. And I typed this into the calculator exactly like we see it, and it came out just like you guys had it at 13 over 15, which means that these both should be divisible by 4. Now, again, since we are able to use calculators, I'm not going to do that math right there, the long division. I mean, not just because I don't want to, but because we can use calculators, which I like. I like them. So enter this ratio as a fraction, again, in lowest terms. This has decimals now. Hopefully that's not a problem. If it is, we'll address it. Try it out, then we'll go over it. So I see 3.5 to 9.8. And again, if I were doing this on my own, I would just type it into the calculator like this. Now, I would just say divided.
I didn't know
And
you could do that.
now, when I put this into my calculator, even when I put this in as a fraction, now, yeah, we saw that the Casio will do this, but if you type this fraction into our TI-30 XS multi-view, both of these are going to give us this decimal, which is not what we want. We do not want the decimal. That's what it gave us. Now, it goes further than that, but we don't care. And that's not too bad right there, but as we've seen, all you got to do is push the double arrow button just above the enter button, and it looks kind of like this. And it will change that into a fraction, which the fraction that we got was 5/14.
Yep, that's what I got.
Yep, and that's what it is. Now, you notice this is just using calculator method, which is something I really enjoy, whether I should or not. But remember back in the day when we would be like, you got to move this decimal over once, you got to move this decimal over once, and then you got to do some long division, and that's going to give you this. That's an ugly decimal, by the way, in my opinion. We don't really want to see that decimal, which is why the calculator makes this so convenient, because you can get to this pretty quick. All right, so the last problem had a decimal to a decimal ratio. Now it's a fraction to mixed number ratio. Try this one, see if you can put it in, and then see if you can get it to simplify, especially the calculator, to simplify into lowest terms. So when I put this into the calculator, I got 4/5, 2, 4, and 4/5. There we go. And the 2 is the ratio portion of that, which is where the fraction would go. So in my fraction, I have my first fraction, which is 4/5. And then my second value, which is a mixed number, I have 4 and 4/5, like this. So in order to put this into the calculator, my button progression looks something like this. So I'm going to push my N/D button. All right, so I've got my fraction. Now, if I push this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it again. And then in my calculator, it's going to make a fraction and then in a fraction. So the top number will be a fraction. Now I can put in my fraction 4, then I go down to the 5. And then I can go down even further, which is going to put me into the denominator. But I now need the mixed number function of the calculator, so I'd push second N/D. And then in the calculator, see a spot opens up for all 3 spots. Then for me, at least, this is what I would push. I'd push 4, then I'd push over, then 4, then I'd push down 5. Okay, now on the calculator, it should show exactly like we see it right there. Well, just push enter. And I got 1/6. Consider the rectangle with a width of 42 inches and a length of 45 inches. Write a ratio of the length to the width and simplify. So it wants 2 parts. We're going to write the original ratio, and then we will simplify. That's what I'm assuming. Maybe they'll only have 1 box on the assignment, which if they did that, they would want the simplified answer. Take a minute, try this one out, then we'll go over it. Okay, so we'll start with the original ratio. It wants the original ratio. And it says, okay, you have width, and then you got length. Width is 42 inches, length is 45 inches. Oh, okay. I did this wrong. So I had done this in the wrong order, right? Because right here, this is where you got to be careful. They said length to width instead.
So it's supposed to be back, so we're supposed to...
So length is 45. And yeah, I did that wrong the first time there too. It's going to be 45 to 42, not 42 to 45. Now again, this is my original ratio. If you want to write it as a fraction, that's fine. I'm going to keep it like that as a ratio, but my final answer I will write simplified as a fraction. So simplified, and ends up being 15/14. So again, this is just something, all I did is put this in the calculator. If you write this as division, so if in the calculator you write 45 divided by 42, it's going to give you an ugly decimal. I don't know what it is because I don't care. But if you just push the double arrow button above the enter button, it will give you this fraction. Or you can type this in as a fraction, 45/42 with the N/D button. So that's it. Ends up being 15/14. All right, write each fraction, write each rate. Okay, so there's a rate. Now again, since it is asking for a rate, we will certainly want to label our answer. Answers are both numbers on this one. Now, it says it wants the rate, which again, we're going to label our answers, both numbers, written as a fraction or mixed number in lowest terms. So there's two different ways to look at this. I'm going to look at it the most common way, which is just the direct way, meaning it says that you got 10 feet in 25 seconds. In is the key word to make this a ratio. So as a ratio, which it says it wants this written as a fraction. So here's my fraction line. I would just make this 10 feet over 25 seconds. Now, the problem with that is that the numbers part of this is not simplified. So that's where we go to the calculator. Now, this is going to give me an equivalent fraction, which we've seen before. Equivalent fractions, this would be considered an equivalent ratio, but it means exactly the same thing, or an equivalent rate. The labels will stay where they are. So the feet, which is on the top, is going to stay on the top, and same with the seconds. This is a crucial feature of rates, at least when you're considering equivalent rates. Labels cannot change location. A feet on the top needs to stay on the top. If you have seconds on the bottom, it needs to stay on the bottom. If you switch them, which you can, you just need to make sure they stay where they are in the beginning, from where they are in the beginning. So again, in the calculator, I would type in 10 over 25, which is going to make this 2 over 5. So in other words, it doesn't say if it's traveling, but this would then read 2 feet in 5 seconds, and that would be considered reduced. Now, I'm okay stopping right there and saying that's it. That's all we need to do. But it said it wants, it says each rate as a fraction or mixed number. So each, I guess that's kind of indicating that we're expecting more than one, all right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this is second way. Again, I'm expecting a fraction. But what we end up doing is just switching the location in the beginning of the two values. So you got seconds on the top and then feet on the bottom. And then once we reduce that, then we should have pretty much the same exact ratio. Or an equivalent ratio, but just written a little differently. Or in a different order. So that would, again, it goes back. That's 25 seconds for 10 feet. We divide those both by 5, and we end up with 5 feet. Also, sorry, 5 seconds for 2 feet. Now, you'll notice we now have a second answer right here, okay?
So should we put that in?
Yes, I would recommend keeping that because on the assignment, they may ask for both.
Okay.
But you notice this was a 2 to 5 ratio here, 2 feet to 5 seconds. When we flipped the two labels here, it flipped the 10 and 25 as well. And so all it ends up doing is flipping this answer. So if you find one answer, the truth is you can just flip it and then go straight down here if you wanted to. Meaning you don't necessarily have to start here. You can go from here to here to here if you want. Now, which one's more useful? It depends on what you're doing. And, you know, if you get into a science class, physics or chemistry or something like that, they may say, well, this one's more useful for the numbers and the labels that we're using. But for now in math, we just say, just know that you can do both. Express the following rate as a fraction in lowest terms. We got, oh, okay, so it says, it's already given us a rate. This is the rate, 7 inches for 7.7 gallons. This is not like the last problem where we're expecting two different, or this to be shown two separate and different times. So this one, we're gonna have to keep the numbers where they are. Try this one out though,
So just 7.
and then we'll go over it. Yeah, so this one, the 4 tells us we are dealing with a ratio there. Now it's saying at lowest term, so again, I'm gonna expect this as a fraction. I got 7 inches there. So we're going to take those 7 inches. That's going to be my numerator. And that's 7.7 gallons. That's going to be my denominator. Okay, so I have this. And again, all I've got to do is plug this into the calculator, and it will give me a simplified fraction. Now, when I did it in mine, I have to get the decimal first just because of the 7.7. It gave me 0.909090, and then it just repeats forever. But I pushed the double arrow button, and it just simplified it for me as 10 over 11. Now again, just for the video's sake, remember that the answer is not 10 over 11, because if we leave it as just 10 over 11, it's a ratio. It says it wants the following rate. So that's where we got to make sure we keep our labels. Inches was on the top, so it needs to stay on the top. Gallons is on the bottom, so it needs to stay on the bottom. That's it. A 3-pound package of meat is priced at $11.97. Find the unit price, which is, it's saying it's price per pound. So you'll have to keep this in mind because I'm not sure that they always give this information. It's price per pound. But they will say something just like unit price, and this may happen as well on exams. But when they ask for a unit price, it's price, or in this case, dollars, per 1 pound. Take 30 seconds, see if you can do this one. So on this one, it tells us you've got a price per pound. And again, the per is the division. And this one, since it's asking for the unit price, meaning prices generally go into decimals, I'm going to keep the decimal on this one. I'm not going to make this a fraction. But the price in this case is in the dollars. So the price for me is the $11.97 divided by the pounds, which up here it says it's 3-pound package, okay? So $11.97 for 3 pounds. Again, I just type this in as division. Now, when you write this out, so this is going to come out at an even 3.99. So again, this is where we got to be careful about our labels. It says up here, this price per pound, the price, as we already know, is in dollars. And then you can write per, or you can just write slash if you'd like. But then it's per pound, like this. Now, if you really want to be specific to show that you know that it's still a rate or ratio, you can put per 1 pound. But this is how much you're going to pay for 3 pounds if the unit price is $3.99 for 1 pound. But again, the critical part here that I'm trying to express is that we need labels in our answers when it gives us or asks for a unit price. Last thing I'm going to mention here is unit price or unit rate. A unit rate is where one of the values is 1. So here you can purchase an 18 fluid ounce bottle of window cleaner for $3.35 or 11 fluid ounce bottle for $2.06. Which bottle of window cleaner is the better deal? Now we got to be careful on this because better deal means cheaper, meaning we don't care about quality, right? One could be really sucky and it's cheaper. We don't care. We're just saying which one's cheaper. So better deal means less dollars for every fluid ounce. And then the second part, what is the unit price, dollars per ounce of this bottle? We're going to actually figure out both anyways. Now, in my opinion, the questions are backwards, okay? I would rather find the unit price of both, which again is showing as dollars per ounce.
So we just do,
So I'm going to do the second question first, but I'm going to do it for both, okay? So, for example, we have an 18 fluid ounce bottle of window cleaner. Now, I know that it's saying unit price, right? So the unit price specifically is dollars per ounce. So my ounce label needs to be in the bottom of my fraction. And so the first, or the top value is the dollars. Well, that 18 fluid ounce bottle was $3.35. So that is the ratio for this, I'm going to call it bottle number 1. And we'll figure that out, but before I get started, I'm going to set up the second one, and then we'll go to the calculator. So the second one says that it's an 11 fluid ounce bottle. Now again, ounces, just the way that it sets up for us, the ounces has to be on the bottom. So if they say unit price, price tells you the numerator. The unit something, the something tells you the numerator. And then that was for $2.06. Boom. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to make equivalent fractions out of both of these. But, like we've said before, both fractions are going to come out with one of the values being 1. And, in fact, it tells us right there, unit price. That means we're looking for every 1 ounce. So each denominator should be 1 fluid ounce, like this. Which means, and again, this is all it means, is it tells you you can pretty much do 2.06 divided by 11 and also 3.35 divided by 18. So I'm going to go to my calculator, and then we're going to see what values that gives us. That tells us the numerator for both. So I'm going to start with the top one, 3.35 divided by 18. Now it gives me a pretty ugly decimal. That's no problem. I'm going to round it to my nearest penny. That's 0. I got 186. The 6 is going to add 1 to the 8, make that 19. And then, of course, the label is in dollars. Next, 2.06 divided by 11, enter. Okay, so this is pretty close, actually. So I'm actually going to show some decimal values in my dollars. So my actual first decimal there was 0.18611, The second decimal came out as 0.18. So the tenths and hundredths match, and then we got mismatching here. So 72727. And again, this is still in dollars. Okay, so we can't say that the first one is necessarily 18 cents or the second one's 18 cents. But what we can say is that they're pretty close to the penny, except now we see a 6 and 7 in the thousandths place value. So I'll kind of highlight those for us. And we got the 6 here and the 7, both in the thousandths place value. The cheaper one is this one, because the 6 is smaller than 7. So I guess I'll write that out. This one's cheaper. Which again, we're kind of assuming that the two window cleaners are comparably the same in terms of quality, even though we don't know that for sure. But in any case, which bottle of window cleaner is the better deal? It's the 18 fluid ounce one. I'm going to keep the rate there and just say it's the $3.35 one for 18 ounces, 18 fluid ounces. There's our objective. I can write and simplify rates and ratios, which also we saw now includes unit rates as well.